you summarize this series in general, Mel, give me 5 words as to how you would summarize the series in a nutshell.
Oh, nobody can win at home. That's what was amazing. I mean, the Nationals look like a different team at home.
Right.
Stranded, left a lot of guys on base. I mean, had great opportunities to get runs in, but just couldn't figure out a way to get those runs in. Left a lot of guys stranded. But, man, they get to Houston, and they're an entirely different team. Now, Game 7, they're kind of struggling a little bit. Greinke had them off balance, and then, caught one and took it out of there, and then AJ comes out there, yanks Greinke, and then everything starts rolling there.
Right.
And you know what's funny? I actually just thought of this. The last 5 World Series, actually 6 now, have ended with the road team winning the final game of the World Series. We haven't seen since the Boston Red Sox. Koji Uehara strikes out Matt Carpenter on a splitter, 84-mile-an-hour splitter away to win the World Series at home. We haven't seen that since 2013.
Yeah, but I was pulling for Washington. I don't know why, but I like that young. I like Juan Soto. Rendon, obviously, he's going to test the free agent market.
Mm-hmm.
And Cole's going to test the free agent market. Maybe he can get back out to the West Coast, get with the Dodgers. Maybe we can get Rendon over there, too. Get us another bat, and we can make a run for it this year or next year.
Yeah, I mean, everyone has Cole going to the Angels, but I think the Dodgers at this point need to open up their checkbook a little bit more. Yeah, Rendon there would be nice. The problem with the Dodgers is they just have an influx of infielders. Obviously, Turner's their third baseman, but a lot of defensive metrics haven't liked him this past season. You have Max Muncy. You have Corey Seager. I mean, Cody Bellinger is the best defensive outfielder other than Mookie Betts in baseball, but he's also a Gold Glove caliber first baseman too. So it's like, what are you going to do? They're going to have to trade somebody. They were talking to the Indians about acquiring Francisco Lindor from the Indians, but I don't really see it. I think Rendon the Rangers, who are opening up a new stadium, we saw when the Marlins in 2012 opened up their new stadium, they went after guys like Heath Bell, Jose Reyes, and a couple, Mark Burley, and then but
that's the Marlins, man.
But it's a new stadium.
You know what? Everybody walks in there, Mel. You know this as well as I do. They walk in there with a new stadium. They have the old honeymoon effect, right? Bring on some players, all of a sudden reality starts to kick in, doesn't it, Mel?
Well, I mean, the Lions opened up Ford Field a while ago. That honeymoon is still going on.
Yeah,
somehow or another. I mean, they're still selling out that place, and the product has not been that great.
Wow.
But yeah, in Miami, they got so many other things to do. Plus, it's hot too.
Yeah.
During the baseball season, and you play those afternoon games. It's rough out there in the stands and no shade.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's true. I think they've been arguing in Arlington that they needed a stadium with some kind of a roof between the rain and the humidity. Mm-hmm. Anybody that I've never seen a game in Texas, whether it was the first Arlington Stadium and the second one, although I did have a chance to walk in there, when I saw the Lions and the Cowboys play, and I drove out to Arlington. I never saw a game there. It was interesting. I only imagine how they've developed the land since, but the Lions a draw anyways. It wouldn't matter. I mean, once upon a time before this kid was born, they played at Tiger Stadium until they moved to the Dome, and now over to Ford Field. So go figure. So
yeah.
So when you talk about the connection, so yeah, like you said, to me, I don't know how much the Dodgers though they won so many games. Why would they try to go after a guy like this?
They don't need to.
No, I mean, how many games can you?
Rendon.
Or Cole.
Rendon, because the point I was making with Rendon, and the Dodgers will probably make a more conservative move, and you could see Hyun-Jin Ryu back in the fold for maybe a 3-year deal, but given his health history, it may happen on a little bit cheaper. But Rendon is a Texas native, and the fact that the Rangers are opening a ballpark, I don't think they'd be opposed to maybe paying a little bit extra, 110 cents on the dollar, to get him there to play third base. And they haven't really had a true third baseman. I mean, they had Beltre, but since the days of Michael Young. And we all remember how great of a hitter Michael Young was, a career 300 hitter. And Rendon...
Yeah, I mean, it would make sense for him to go back to Texas.
Yeah, and we saw how he did in Houston. I mean, same division, but could you imagine he gets to play in that ballpark 9 to 10 times a year, Scott?
Yeah, right.
So... I mean, it'll be interesting. If you were to take away one thing other than what you said about no team winning at home from this series, what do you think, stood out to you the most other than the fact that just nobody can win at home? Is Jekyll and Hyde leaving get men on base?
Well, we always talk about good pitching beating good hitting. And I think this series was about the hitting. It wasn't so much about the pitching. The pitchers, they grinded their way through it, but it was really about the hitting and the clutch hitting from both teams when they're on the road. At home, neither one of the teams did well hitting, but the hitting on the road was outstanding.
Yeah. I mean, it was, and I mean, I was talking to Scott about this earlier. I think if there's one person I'm most happy for, it's Max Scherzer, because of all of the adversities he had gone through this year. And then I spoke briefly about the passing of his brother a couple of years ago to suicide, something that's never to joke about.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and for Ryan Zimmerman, Mel, the first player the Nationals ever drafted since they moved to D.C. in 2005. He was also in the big leagues the same year he was drafted in 2005. I believe it only took him less than a month to get up there. So, we have, there's so many beautiful storylines, and I don't know if you agree with me on this. You did, you are obviously a former NFL player, so you may see it a different way, but the beauty of winning the World Series in baseball, obviously the moment of celebration on the mound, and when everybody gathers, the coalescing of 8 to 9 months of just pure grind, and maybe you can even call it a year-round thing because the guys are always working. It's something that you can't see in other sports.
All right, Mel, we got about another minute to go. Any final observations on the World Series?
I was glad, like I said, it was a good series. I watched it. I love playoff baseball. It's hard for me to watch 162 games, but I do plan on going to see a few more games this year because I really got into a couple of guys out there, a couple of players, really the young talent that's coming up. And they got some real nice young talent like that. Juan Soto, he's going to be something special. He's a very talented young player.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, you know what, Mel, we'll get you back on your regular sport next Thursday. How's that sound? I'm glad you had an opportunity to talk about some baseball tonight. So,
all right, guys.
All right, thanks for calling, Mel. We'll talk to you next Thursday. Thank
Always
you very
good.
much.
All right.
Appreciate you, buddy.
Take care.
Thanks.
Be safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So, yeah, I now that Mel's in Atlanta, the Braves are certainly a team that are an up-and-coming team. Like anything else, they'll go ahead and go through their growing pains like every young team.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Snitker, certainly they found a good manager there. And, the Braves plus, I actually think the ballpark's at a spot where if there's ever a ballpark that needs to be in suburbs, I would think the Braves really need it. Mm-hmm. Because if you know anything about that downtown Atlanta area, yes, they can draw well there, but the parking's probably much easier at SunTrust Park. I've driven by it, on I-75 quite a bit.
Beautiful stadium, right? That's all I've heard
of. I've driven by it off the interstate, so I've never seen it. I never even saw a game at Turner Field either, although I wouldn't mind going to a Georgia State game to say I was in the ballpark. Mm-hmm. But I did see one over at Fulton County Stadium years ago, so it was pretty interesting. Our next guest is Damon Knight. He'll have some thoughts about the Nationals and some free agents. But, all in all, I've really enjoyed our conversation with Ron Swoboda. I really did.
Yeah,
Ron,
I mean, one of the highlights of the show for sure.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, and Ron's a good guy, and I'm looking forward that we have a chance to go out there and see him later on. No matter a couple of months. I think of the time, where did this year go? Or where's it going? With that said, we'll let Damon Knight go ahead and answer that question and then some. And Damon, thanks for being on the Sports Exchange. Glad to have you with us.
Thank you, Scoop. I appreciate it. How you doing?
Well, doing great, thanks. All right.
That's awesome.
Some thoughts about the Nationals and some free agents. Go ahead.
Yeah. If you didn't know, the Nationals won the World Series last night 6-2. It was led by, Anthony Rendon, big sensational hitter. You got Steven Strasburg, who went 5-0. He started the game before that. And then Garrett Cole, they had him in the bullpen. He was warming up. And then, of course, the Astros decided to put in Chris Harris. He gives up the lead, and the rest is history. So it was crazy, and I think they made a big mistake. With Garrett Cole leaving, you might as well put him in that situation and to win it. And so they didn't do it. He's expected to cash in big this offseason, making probably $240 million. The teams that are interested are the Yankees, Angels, Phillies, Rangers, and Dodgers. It's been reported by Buster Olney that some of his Astro teammates think it's going to be a California team. Meanwhile, Strasburg is supposed to opt out of his 2-year contract of $100 million, and Rendon is supposed to cash in with an offer from the Nationals of 7 years, $215 million, or he can test the free agent waters.
So we were just talking to Mel Farr about Rendon possibly playing in for the Dodgers, and I don't really see that. Damon, I think, and here's a team that's been mentioned a few times, and Scott, you can chime in too. Tell me if you agree with me, because I'd love your intake. But Damon, the Texas Rangers, Rendon is a native of Texas. They're opening a new stadium next year. They're leaving Globe Life Park. Could you see Anthony Rendon manning third base and being the next heir to Adrian Beltre over there?
You know what? Why not? You know, you're a Texas native. You know, might as well play for your hometown. You know, that'd be great. I'm sure his family and friends would love to see him the majority of the year rather than, you know, maybe once a month. And so I wouldn't blame him. And, you know, Texas is an up-and-coming team. I don't know how good of a team they're going to be in the future, but, you know, I wouldn't see why not.
Yeah, I mean, you know, they still have a lot of John Daniels and co. have a lot to work with, but I think they have the right manager to work with him. Chris Woodward, former third base coach for the Dodgers, and he tied to the Yankees organization. I believe he played there at one point. So I mean, I do like the marriage there. I mean, you know what's funny though? I mean, as much as I love Garrett Cole, and it was kind of a formality that we figured he'd be in another uniform come say December when he's going to sign his mammoth contract, most likely.
Oh yeah, he deserves it.
But any inklings that any of us suspected of him returning to the Astros, I believe, were squashed last night when A.J. Hinch did not put him in that game. I think Garrett Cole, as much of a competitor as he was, and I don't know if you read his post-game comments where he merely referred to himself as unemployed and not a current member of this team.
Yeah, and I didn't like those comments. It was kind of selfish, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. But he is right in a sense, you know, speaking in third person, that, you know, he's not employed by this team now that the World Series is over and he's fulfilled the contract requirements. And so he's just looking out for him. And that's the mentality you got to have in free agency, is to look out for yourself, your family, and that's what comes first. And then the rest will, you know, play out later. And so I think we'll make the right decision. I wouldn't necessarily go with the Rangers, to be honest with you.
No.
I think he's better suited to go with like the Yankees, or, you know, if he wants to go home to California, go home to California. I would choose the Angels. They just got Joe Madden. You know, they just added the former coach of the Mets, Mickey Callaway, as their pitching coach, I believe. And so that team is looking to do business. And then the Phillies, that's an interesting situation with Bryce Harper, and I would like to see that.
I think
so.
Yeah, you're definitely right. The Yankees are definitely looking to do business in more ways than one. Everybody thought that was a team that should be able to win it all, but boy, but like you yourself said, pitching was definitely their undoing. The pitching coach takes the fall for it, which she kind of figured they may have needed a new voice after 9 years there. But I'm kind of like you, Lewis. I actually thought Rothschild was going to end up over with Philadelphia, so that really caught me off guard.
They just fired him.
Yeah, they hired Brian Price to be their pitching coach.
The guy former manager for Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm. And he does have prior experience as a pitching coach. The only thing is I don't understand. I mean, Brian Price, you know, he's going from one very offensive-friendly park in Great American Ballpark in Cincinnati to another one in Philadelphia. So it'll be interesting to see if Cole were to sign there. I mean, I think the team that needs him the most is the Angels, even though I think that the addition of him wouldn't make him a contender because they're still like 6 to 7 arms away from really competing.
Yeah, he'd be good at rotation with Shohei Ohtani. You know, that lineup or that rotation would just be a 1-2 punch like a Verlander and Cole were. And so that would be really exciting. And the Angels have been so desperate for a title, man. When are they going to get it? Like, you know, they got Michael Trout, one of the best players in baseball, if not the best, you know, besides Bryce Harper, in my opinion. And then you got Albert Pujols, who's aging, but he's still got the power. I remember when he got his home run against the Tigers, I think it was like his 2000th RBI. Mm-hmm. Right. You know, the guy can still hit for power, and he's an amazing hitter. I've never seen him ever have that season. And so that would be a great addition. I loved the Angels growing up. So, you know,
it'll be interesting to see what actually happens out there with Joe Madden with the Angels. It will, as well as some of the other pitching coaches that get reassigned elsewhere. Because let's not kid ourselves, it's the most important position on the diamond. And you have somebody out there that not only understands the manager they're dealing with, but the analytics and the way pitchers are made these days.
Yes.